last time we showed the game, and I said this when we were doing the presentation today, I think To Human is one of the biggest, most misunderstood games in the industry. We showed it, we were compared to games like Devil May Cry and God of War, which is nothing like we're like. So we went dark, essentially for 18 months, with the exception of the preview that we were with IGN a few months ago. And we went away till we could show the entirety of the RPG system, the hunting and gathering. And we really are coming out now and saying, you know, if you like games like Diablo, World of Warcraft, as well as a combination of that with action, that's really what defines To Human. And we really couldn't show that before, and that's one of the reasons we decided to go quiet. And you know, we really hope that people sort of look at To Human for what it is now and the entirety of its scope. It's got a massive story that's, you know, associated with Silicon Knights. It's got some Twitch elements that you never see in these RPG games. And when you look at things like, say, the controller and the right-hand stick, which everyone's always asked us about, if you look at a game like Diablo or World of Warcraft, what you do is essentially click. And that's the entirety of the gameplay there. So what we had to do is come up with a control system that was sort of relaxing, you could do for long periods of time, because something like, say, Ninja Gaiden or God of War, you just click, and doing all these combos. You do that for hunting and gathering games, you'll be tired, you'll get carpal tunnel syndrome within an hour. And so we wanted to create sort of a relaxing interface, and at the same time create all these deep elements. So now finally we showed all these different combinations of cybernetics and armor sets and all the different weapon classes and all the gameplay. And really, we hope people can really see To Human for what it is now and finally say, oh, now I understand To Human. Well, certainly people are used to controlling the camera, and one of our big things, one of our big philosophies is, you know, when we went from 2D to 3D, there was this barrier that was introduced to gamers where suddenly, like Mario 64, which I loved, you're doing all these really cool things, but then you have to control the camera at the same time. It's this added layer of complexity that lost a lot of people. So what we tried to do is design a camera system that's fully in control, and the right stick combat is for doing things. It's very, very much, if you start thinking along the lines of Geometry Wars, you pull the triggers and move the stick around, your character will shoot in those directions, or if you let go of the triggers, he'll do sword attacks in that direction. You know, double tapping will juggle guys up in the air. And we have found that once people understand that system, they get to really like it really quickly. But it is, To Human is such a different game. And in some ways, you know, I think Silicon Knights, I remember when Eternal Darkness came out, everyone compared us to Resident Evil. Oh, it's another Resident Evil. And we were like, this is nothing like Resident Evil. You know, but we couldn't, you know, we couldn't explain that to people until they sat down and played it. And all I can say to gamers now is this combat system and the control system has been built from the ground up to help players do hunting and gathering combined with action, which has never been done before as far as I can see. And you have a lot of games that resemble it and they kind of fake it and they go, oh, you can pause the game. There's no pausing in To Human. It's always action oriented, but at the same time, it's got these huge, deep role-playing elements where you have to do combat and loot gathering for long periods of time. So you have to be able to do that. And the system, I think, is extremely effective. We have found once people understand the system, they really tend to enjoy it. And it's just, you know, sitting down and playing with it for more than a couple minutes, I think people will pick up with it. And I personally think it's the best system that we've designed to date as far as controls go. You know, really the gamers are going to decide though. Because To Human's got a lot of action, we really wanted to, we feel that when you're telling content, you want to create peaks and valleys. So if you're going to have intense action, you can't have intense action all the time. So we designed Cyberspace to be this artificial reality that looks natural, but allows the players to find secrets and hidden loot and, you know, very rare items. So it's an outdoor environment that's essentially like the Matrix. It's not real, but it allows you to, you know, get advantages against boss fights. There's all kinds of things. So whenever you see a cyberspace well, you'll be able to go in, teleport yourself or an image of yourself there, and go through basically the electronic, you know, the internet or cyberspace back in the Norse time, back in our story, and manipulate the world, the real world. And we think that it's a very different experience that way, and it really is a big juxtaposition. In To Human, there's 3 factions. A lot of people think it's just man against machine. That's not true, actually. In To Human, we have the humans and the gods, the monsters and the giants, which are machines, and then you've got the artificial intelligences, which are the Norns and all the groups in cyberspace that's like the repository of information. And all these groups are fighting for survival. And they all want to, you know, make a mark and that's our story really converges in all that over the trilogy arc, and it's a really, I think that's something that people who are interested in story will really appreciate. Oh, that you can save multiple characters in a game, and I actually expect people to create multiple people who are really into the game. I expect to play multiple characters. So when I played Diablo as an example, I had a necromancer, I had a sorcerer or sorceress, and and there's nothing wrong with playing multiple classes, but there's also different specialties within each class. So within the skill trees, you're not going to be able to exhaust all the skill trees. So you can have like a berserker who specializes in two-handed weapon damage dealing, or you can have a berserker that specializes in faster combat, or one that enhances his party with better bonuses. There's many different directions that you can go in that way, and then you can have, of course, more of a berserker that leans towards cybernetics, one that's more towards human, and there's all different kind of combinations that you can do. And I think certainly we'd never want to punish the player if they don't like. You can always respect your skill trees and stuff and experiment, but if in the end, if you don't like your certain character, for the next game, we can always give you some default ones for the second and third games as well. So, but we do expect to raise the level caps and stuff. So it really does resemble games like World of Warcraft in many ways that way. So once you play the game through single player and you get all the cinemas, you can skip some of those certainly. And when you're grinding and you're playing multiplayer, and we're not showing a lot of the co-op right now, but and we'll show that at a later date. But once you've played the game through, you just play the game. When you play the levels, the setups change. There's different enemies in different locations. We start introducing variants and polarities. And essentially, it really changes the dynamics of the gameplay. And so to get to level 50, we introduce more content through runic charms and stuff like that, kill a certain amount of enemies and other achievements. But at the same time, getting to the higher levels, the gameplay has to change dynamically. And we do adapt. The AI changes, it gets a lot smarter, it gets a lot tougher. You start realizing that, hey, I really like the Defender class because when missiles hit me, they don't knock me down because he's got a special stability armor enhancement that doesn't allow him to be knocked down. And all the other classes are getting, missiles come in barrages, and like you're seeing 2 or 3 now, you can see 30 of them coming in. That's ugly. And you start to realize that, hey, I'm going to get the aggro, so the Defender can go in, get the aggro, and then you can have the damage dealers in the back and sort of really do it that way. And when all that stuff really does come together for the gamer, I think that stuff is really fun. And I think a game sort of like Diablo had legs. It had grinding, but it also, I thought it really explored itself by, exploring the class. In Diablo, the classes changed significantly from level 20 to level 30 to level 40 to level 50. I remember when I was a necromancer at one point, I had a couple bone golems. I was like, I'm going to go all skeletons. And I started raising tons of skeletons. Had a few AI problems in some of the places, but I'd always raise like 30 skeletons, and I'd go around and do that. That's the same thing with your human. As you go through sort of these decades of levels, everything's going to change pretty significantly. And you'll find that a berserker can suddenly go through like a berserker gets more combo levels as an example, and he can start doing all these different these runers and doing a lot of special damage attacks that other classes just can't do, and he can just build it up more. And there's all these different things that you can explore and start realizing the difference between the classes. And to me, that was sort of the magic of the hunting and gathering and the exploration of the class system and the skill trees. And we've worked really hard at that. We're in the tweaking and balancing stages now of the game, but everything is pretty much realized. Now we're just balancing and getting all that stuff in, and we think we're hitting our marks. So we're pretty happy so far. And when the game's released, time will tell. But hopefully that's how we've addressed that issue.